Well, hello guys, and welcome back to another installment of Galley Stories, Stories of the Bering Sea and Beyond. I am Mark Kaler, and today I've got four very special guests. We're doing a bit of a fundraiser in Captain Pat Dwyer's name, and these are four of his best friends, four of the people that knew him best, and we're trying to raise money for ALS in his name. So let me introduce the guys to you. On the far side is Ian Pitzman. Say hello.
Yep. Hi everybody.
John Garner.
Hello, everybody.
Russ Ostrom.
Afternoon, everyone.
And Harley Vroom Vroom Davidson.
Yo.
So welcome, guys. Appreciate you guys tuning in. I know that we'll have people gathering and joining as we go, but I really want to get started with, first of all, to donate while we're live, just Google Pat Dwyer, ALS. Go right there, hit donate. These donations are being tracked live, so we'll be able to know this fairly immediately. So let's just get started. This format is not going to change. We're going to start with who knew him as a child or has memories of him growing up, or stories even of him growing up.
Well, actually, I grew up in the same neighborhood as Pat. Didn't know it. I was on a plane in 1995, coming down from a king crab season. And I get seated next to this guy, and we start talking because Pat wasn't short of words ever. And it ended up that. Where'd you grow up? Seattle. Oh, what part? Oh, Wedgwood area. And ended up we grew up in the same neighborhood. I walked by his house probably every day on the way home from school. He went to the Catholic schools. I went to the public schools. So we never met until 1995. And then there were all these strange coincidences. The paper routes as kids. He was at the top of. He was at the top of the hill. My paper shack was at the bottom of the hill. His birthday's April 14th. Mine's April 10th. His wife's is, so he's 4 days after me. His wife's birthday's 4 days before mine. And so he invited me down to look at the Lafayette, which they were converting into a crab boat. John's company was. And
we kind of smirk about that a little bit.
We do. And so I go down when I get to Seattle, and I'm going down, kind of taking a tour, and that's all it was an invite. Come down and see what I'm doing here. And unbeknownst to me, the shipyard worker was friends with the owner of the boat that I was running, and he immediately went in and said, "Hey, by the way, do you need somebody to run your boat? Because Russ is going to be taking the Lafayette," which turned into the Beverly B. So unbeknownst to me, I was out of a job. And thankfully, John and the guys, after interview, then hired me, and Pat and I started working together. He owned... Do you
remember what year that was, Russ?
I think that was 1996.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, because I think right after King Crab, the project was just about done, and we took the boat up for a Pelio that year. Then after that, he owned a boat of his own. He had the Jennifer A at the time, and I also had a little crab boat, which was kind of the ugliest thing up there. It was called the Diligence, and so through all the shipyard times and learning from Pat, we lengthened our boat, and he sponsored his, and we were both kind of interactive of, what should we do here? It was mostly me saying, "Pat, what should I do here?" Because when it came to refrigeration, hydraulics, personnel, it was...
The more I learn about him, it seems like just a hands-on.
Mr. MacGyver, man.
Yeah.
MacGyver.
Yeah.
You got a problem, he can fix it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
He's going to have a different way to fix it than the normal way.
Sure.
The Lafayette was the second project that he did for us, and so the first one was even worse than that one, if you can imagine. But the Lafayette was a processing ship that became a crab boat called the Beverly B after Beverly Bingham, who was one of the owners of the company. And you got to be the captain the first.
And I got to be the captain.
Yeah.
I was there when we Pat set up a big old christening for the boat, and dropping the curtain over the name for Beverly to see, and breaking the champagne over the bow. And,
Oh, really?
She cried a little bit.
Oh, yeah, she cried a little bit. That was pretty good, and so forth. But Pat and our lives just intertwined so much. I mean, one of his neighbors was a girl named Kim, who is the cute little blonde girl from kindergarten on. And I think from, we both had a crush on her, we found out.
You got the first paper, huh?
Oh, yeah. It was just the way our lives were just kind of intertwined was amazing. And, we became pretty good friends. And
lifelong friends.
Yeah. And unbeknownst to John, there were times where we were on hourly when I was down and so forth. That we did go and look at cars and other boats, and you did pay me for that.
Yes,
Thank you.
yeah.
So.
No, you're welcome. Every job has to have its benefits.
Well, it does.
Yeah,
It does.
So we've actually got a question already from Ashley, and she's asking, was Pat a first generation fisherman? And he was.
It was. Yeah.
But Jenny is not.
Right. That's correct.
So
Jenny's from
the
Ketchikan.
fishing side comes from Jenny,
Yeah.
right? And he kind of, I don't know, maybe through their relationships, or maybe he was just that tinkerer. Or no, you know what?
He was their repo.
He
Remember
started
that
repoing.
That repo thing he did for his uncle.
Yeah.
And then he went up to Alaska, and then he got hooked up with some fishing.
If you guys really want to learn some backstory about the younger Pat Dwyer, watch Sean Dwyer's podcast or listen to his podcast.
That's where I got
He's got just a ton of information. In fact, his podcast was based on Sean, right? But he spent 70% of the time talking about Pat because he had that kind of impact on Sean and obviously to you guys here. So who's next? Who's got the next story?
I guess maybe I can go next.
Yeah.
So I met Pat as an adult. As a young skipper, Pat hired me to run his boat, the Jennifer Ray. This was in 1995, so just before he got involved with building the Norquest fleet for John. So he owned the Jennifer Ray. He had a couple years before bought it and refitted it. It was an 18-year-old boat when he bought it, and fishing involved in other fisheries. He refitted it as a crabber. So I flew out to Dutch and I met Pat, and he hired me to do one season. It was a Paradise season, and as it turned out, not a very good one, but Pat and I hit it off right away. He was a remarkable guy, and we became, first I started working for him, and then fairly quickly we became friends. That first year on the Jennifer Ray, we didn't make any money. We tried hard. It was a Paradise season where the Paradise were nowhere to be found, and so we ended the season after maybe 3 weeks of diligently searching for crab and talking to Pat every day. Pat was the kind of guy that, different from my previous boat owners, my experience with a previous boat owner who, I would report at the end of a trip how the trip went. Well, Pat wanted to know what was going on a day-to-day basis. And he set the boat up accordingly. The Jennifer Ray was refitted with electronics that were, to me, new. It was we had satellite communication for email, and we had electronic charting, neither of which I'd ever worked with before. And it was all alongside this. He didn't want to throw away the 1978, paper chart depth sounder.
Was he hoarding?
So
Maybe
he just wanted to get his value out of everything. That was just his nature, and so we anyway. That season came to an end, but as it turned out, that boat was to be my career for the next 13 years. I worked for Pat from 1995 until 2008, and a few years after I started, or maybe the next year, 96.
Marriages, huh?
96, I guess.
for crabbers, yeah. For crabbers.
Well, it was. You develop a relationship, and you, as a captain in the Bering Sea, remote, and you rely on your support network. And Pat was a support network like nobody else. He could fix things just by troubleshooting over the phone, get to the root of the problem.
So, someone was actually telling me that he knew the boat so well that when they talked to him on the phone, they could go, okay, down the steps to the right, there's a black box, and it's like just walking them right through.
Photogenic memory.
Yeah.
You wouldn't want to play him in poker or nothing. I think he memorized every card.
No.
Any boat, your boat, my boat, any boat. He did it.
And he wouldn't mix them up. I mean, there were big boats. There was a lot of systems on there,
and he was right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had him
you
more or
better call
less.
Pat on this one,
I had him more or less all to myself for about a year, I think it was, and then he took the job as the Norquest fleet manager and quickly started building or converting boats into into their crab fleet. And so I met these guys shortly thereafter, and the Jennifer Ray, Pat's boat, became part of the Norquest fleet. We all worked together, became friends, supported each other, and all that was through Pat. Really, it was.
So I was the guy on the processing side of the world. These guys were the independent fishermen that I had to deal with all the time.
Right.
Occasionally over beer, but it's what you do.
That's when things get done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so our company was composed of owners who were fishermen and not fishermen, but we were all small boat fishermen, right? So 58 foot and under was kind of our area of expertise. And so we wound up with this processing ship that had crab capability, and we, being kind of Norwegian-like, we said, let's go into the crab business.
Absolutely.
And we did. So we had to have a person who could manage that fleet, put together, have some relations with some of the fishermen. And Pat was the perfect guy. He would take a project. I don't want to use the word cheap, but he was very good at putting together things that worked very well for not a lot of money. He was very personable, so he could attract people like you. You ran away from me as soon as you could, I remember. But he was just that really magic guy when it came to putting together the equipment and the people, making the package and making it work. And he had a lot of fun doing it. That was the thing about it. He had a great sense of humor and enjoyed every minute of what he was doing with you guys. I know it. So yeah.
And that was a mutual regard. John used the word cheap. I wouldn't have used that same word, but Pat he wasn't afraid to spend money, and he spent a lot of money. I mean, we're talking about building crabbers, spent millions, but he was concerned about where every penny went. One of my engineer for a long time actually on the boat, used to say that Pat had short arms and deep pockets. There was a lot of money down there, but he couldn't quite reach it.
You guys got any funny stories about Pat that maybe you'd care to share?
I have maybe it's just an impression. So my first impression of Pat as a boat owner was not what I expected. He was a hands-on guy, and if something was wrong,
Carhartt bibs, whoa, what are you doing?
He wanted to be involved, right? And so I think about a boat owner from Seattle. So I lived in Alaska. I met Pat through a mutual friend. Rob Rogers introduced us, and I ended up working for him. And so working for a Seattle boat owner, that was like a whole new realm to me. And I'm picturing somebody that pulls up next to their boat in a BMW and hops out and walks in their clogs over and shouts down at the boat below some instructions, and then goes back to their Beamer and drives off. That was just kind of the image I had in my head. Pat did have a BMW, but he had his welding helmet and his Carhartt coveralls. And so what sticks in my mind the most was it was one of those first few years, and we had a big shipyard down here in Seattle. And after working on the boat for months, we were leaving to go to Alaska. And we were headed out through the locks, and we had a coolant alarm go off. So didn't think too much of it, refilled it, continued on. We got down to Shoal and it went off again. And so I knew we had a problem, and I tied up, called Pat, and he said, well, find the leak. And so we look around, and it's in the bilge, right? And our bilges are low, luckily, and we find the leak, but it's down. The Jennifer A had a 13-foot draft, so that bilge is deep. A 398 cat and a big reduction gear behind it. And we can see that leak, but we can maybe get down there with a deck brush. It's down there, way down there. And I didn't know what to do. And about that time, Pat shows up. And before I really knew what was going on, I'm holding one leg, the engineer's holding the other, and Pat is literally upside down, welding over his head first. Anyway, that's the kind of boat owner he was. Very different breed.
Hands on or feet on.
Yeah, exactly.
I was fortunate enough to meet him in '99, and when he gave me the first chance to run a crab boat. I've been running tender boats, and I got to codfish for other people, but Pat gave me one of your Norquest boats. He let me have the Cape Caution, and so he trusted me with that, and that was quite an honor, and did that. And the year '99, I took off out of Seattle in late December, and I got up. It was Y2K, and we kept thinking everything's going to shut down, and kept thinking, oh, this is going to be bad. And then we got to Ketchikan on New Year's Eve, and it was just kind of a crazy trip. There was some breakdowns and this and that.
Not on the Cape Caution.
The Cape
No.
Tragic.
Cape Tragic.
Now Ian owns it, so I got
It's okay.
that was my start with him, and I was so happy. And we got to build a friendship, and we wound up buying property, living not far from each other, being able to go snowmobiling, four-wheeling to go up to see him and his family, and seeing what he was building at his property, and it just kept growing, and then to the point where he was. The guys, you haven't really explained about how he's such a social butterfly. Because this guy, I was telling John yesterday that I don't know where his office was. I don't think he ever had an office. I seen him either in his truck or the parking lot, or the boats. But when we went to the corporate, he was never in the office. He's always out in the parking lot screaming something to somebody. Or
his office was his yellow pad and his phone. That's what it was. You know?
That's where
this
he
is
worked.
before internet and email and all that sort of stuff.
Sean mentioned that when he used to visit his office, it was just a stack of yellow pads.
Yeah, I don't even. I was running operations for Northwest. I don't remember him even having the cube that apparently he had. Thank God I wasn't in charge of admin.
Where is he? He's always on his phone. You can get a hold of him. But at the time, Norquest was being bought by Trident, and between him and Russ also, they introduced me to the HR lady at Trident, and then it got to be.
That's a story in itself.
Okay, now be careful where you go with this.
Right.
This is about
This is
Pat.
live,
Remember,
right?
this
You
is,
can't take it back.
That's not really how it went. It was more like, hey, Harley, I was just over at the office. The HR guy, you should see her. She's beautiful. You better get over there.
I was a single guy for
Pat
quite a while then.
introduced you guys? Or he-
Pat was playing Cupid. He was way all into this. He was into this Harley meet Sonova deal. And he was all through the parking lot. And her birthday was close to my birthday. Not the same year, but the birthdays.
bit of a discrepancy.
And so she kind of made a mistake on the contract. And the boat was moved up to Homer. And he said, "Whoa, you should go up to Homer, to Anacortes. You should go up to Anacortes and get him to redo the contract." And okay, she talked her into it. So she came up there, and that's when I got to take her out to dinner, and things blossomed for, we're on our 13th year of marriage,
That's awesome.
Did you guys have much interaction together, or was this connection made through Pat?
No, it was all through Pat.
Yeah, all three of us were fishing partners.
Yeah.
And that was Pat. That was.
Yeah, the time we spent together was either in the shipyard, which was common, or in Dutch Harbor. And I lived in Alaska. Russ lives east of the mountains, and Harley lived up north.
Russ had to take me because we were part of the same family. Now Ian was.
Well, I didn't have to take you.
I was going to follow you anywhere you went. So I had to follow Russ fishing, but Ian was, he was independent with Pat, but also he was still part of our group, and we got to be really close friends through that, and all four of us, all three of us and Pat, the shipyards were a lot of fun. Going down there at shipyard when Russ was talking about going looking at cars and stuff, there wasn't a whole lot of work going on. There was a lot.
But I'll tell you,
it was a lot of fun. We were sitting there.
If you have a ship in the shipyard, anything can go wrong, as you know, right? And who do you want to represent you with that shipyard?
Yeah.
You want Pat Dwyer.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because he knew everything that they were doing and how to do it better than they did. It was really,
Harley
really
said
good.
he had a photogenic memory.
Yeah.
Or just
Yeah.
It sure seemed like it. Yeah,
Oh, no,
you bet.
And another part of that is that, just think about this. He owns a crab boat that competes with the crab boats that he's putting together and managing for us, right? And so there could be all sorts of conflicts if you have the wrong person.
Sure.
But Pat was
Let's
just...
take that fuel pump and give it to my boat.
Yeah, exactly.
You guys pass it over.
There was never any hint at
that's
all.
not
Pat
the
was
way.
just as straightforward as you can be. Yeah, good guy.
Most honorable,
Sounds like he was
honorable, likable guy. You can believe it.
sounds like he was a great friend, a good mentor, excellent leader, matchmaker.
Yeah, that too.
So
The other thing,
go ahead, no, please.
The other thing I was going to mention is you didn't just, it wasn't like we just knew Pat, right? So Jen would help with grocery shopping, right? So you got to know his whole family.
You got the family
If you
for
were
the
working-
price.
If you were working for or working with Pat, his family was part of his daily operation.
We were snowmobiling. They were, I've seen them and their little rope tow lift they had and all this stuff.
Wasn't Sean down at shipyard as a young kid? You have a story about this,
He
don't
was
you?
always down at the shipyard, wearing his little life jacket, and he had to have been, I don't know, 5, 6, something like
He
that.
wasn't very old.
It was very quiet, very quiet.
Until I hung out with you for an afternoon.
Well, yeah, and then I guess he did come home, and I do remember him teaching him how to burp the ABCs, and I guess that didn't go over well with Mom because
good.
because in fact it was just brought up today. Yeah, and don't forget what you did to my son. You taught me how to belt.
Those are shipyard skills.
It is. You can use that later in life.
You taught people how to communicate.
Yes. Communication
That's what's
skills.
doing, yeah.
And burp is a 4-letter word. So.
You know, I was working with Pat one day on the Beverly B. I got to run the Beverly B afterwards, and him and I were down in the engine room, and he was turning a wrench with me, and I'm watching. I probably had my hands in the pocket, and he was turning the wrench, and all of a sudden he's, ow, you know, something was wrong, and it was kind of alarming, and he's going to go to the doctor today, and okay, and so we went to the doctor, and we just didn't really think too much of it until, as we found out, it took a little bit. We found out something was seriously wrong, and it took a little longer to find out what it truly was. And it was, those are the times that's when you really started to freaking love Pat. Seeing how he was handling his disease, and when he got to the point where he got to the wheelchair, and then how he was going to tackle that, buying another boat, but getting a side by side that can haul him in a wheelchair. I mean, he was not quitting. And you just, that's when, as much as I loved him at the start, that's when I truly started loving him.
Because he wasn't
and respecting his wife and his son and his daughter.
Yeah.
How they just started dealing with this terrible thing that happened.
Yeah, you can't talk about ALS for Pat without talking about the family also. They're a big part of.
Well, everybody
this,
suffers the disease, right?
But when when you're diagnosed, there can be a very quick ALS and there can be a very slow, and his turned out to be slow, but at the time he didn't know what it was going to be, 2 years or 5 years or what is it going to be. And he had this crab operation, and was right in the middle of buying another boat for this crab operation.
Boat.
Yeah.
Sean said he was in high school, or at 14 maybe.
So
when he got,
does he quit and stop, or does he go ahead? Well, we know what he did. He went ahead.
Yeah, he went for it.
Yeah.
He went for it, and throughout the process when he was doing it and starting to find out about the ALS and all the different obstacles there and trying to solve it, us working with him, we know he's a fixer. He fixes things. He can fix things. There's always another way you can fix it, and you can fix this. And he was running into dead ends, and to the point where I don't think he ever gave up, but he just kept wondering, how can we solve this? How can we solve this problem?
Actually, that same attitude is probably why his family supports this particular, ALS TDI so strongly, because that organization is focused on fixing, finding a cure, fixing this problem, which is very much in keeping with Pat's personality.
Yeah, that's exactly.
He wasn't able to accomplish it in his lifetime, but he's going to continue to.
He's still here. He's still here, telling us, "Come on, you guys!
Come on, you guys!
Get back after it.
Find a way to do this. It's just a fuel line. Go around it or fix it. And the same thing you were telling me when he was telling you when you were holding him upside down. Whenever I had a problem, he told me, and he taught me something about how to find. You got to just keep tracing it. It's either between here and there. It's a breaker somewhere, or there's a fuse, or there's a breaker, or there's something in between here and there. And I believe that's the same thing that we're trying to learn with this ALS. That there's something that we can find between here and there, and we need to find it to solve this.
And we're hoping that as this video airs, posted and then shared, beyond, that's what will happen. The link has already been up for where to donate. I know that each of you are going to do your part, but the fact is we got to reach out to everyone that we can, not just on social media, but friends and family. It's a terrible, devastating disease. Andy, you were really close with Pat. What did you notice after diagnosis and until the time that he left?
Well, I was really close with him, like you say, but both my working relationship and personal, but a lot of it was remote, and so I noticed there was a period of uncertainty. It was short while Pat kind of figured out, what am I going to do about this? And then he basically just dove right into, work and life, just as he always had, with the same sort of enthusiasm and thoroughness. So from the perspective of a vessel in Alaska that he is supporting, there was not a lot of difference. He was still there on the radio every day. He still wanted to know what the weather was. He still wanted to know the crab count. I mean, he wanted to know the CPUE. These guys could probably attest to that. So I was tempted to fudge it a little, so I'd look better than these guys. But he wanted to know every day, not at the end of the trip, not at the end of the week.
Right.
So that never really wavered until the very end. He was absolutely engaged in his business, and he used to say, there's a couple of different Pat-isms I can think of, but one of them that he said a lot was, if it's not good for the boat, it's not good for anybody. And just a statement, but I think what he was talking about was like, the community that a vessel supports, right? So a vessel is a little economic engine in and of itself, and the vessel owner and his family, of course, are dependent on the income. The captain and his family, the crew and their family, it broadens out beyond that, right? The processors.
Then it goes to John's side, the processing side.
He said that a lot.
Suppliers and the whole thing. Yeah.
That was one of the Pat-isms that he. I know he felt that way. He repeated it to me, and he sort of lived that. He was always thinking about what was the best for the boat, and by extension,
small areas and small people. Anybody that's going to work on the boat, we're going to find. We did some of the vendors that we had were not the mainstream vendors. They were the guys that were. They were good workers, and the hydraulic guy Monty, and you just remember people that we worked with, and these guys were good, but they weren't the big company. He wanted to share his bringing the boat to Homer. Huge. And all the work he did with all the little vendors, and which is you have that ability to do to a community or to a family or to the boat. Right? That's exactly how.
And I think all the, Bruce from Salmon Bay Hydraulics was another one. He could go over to the shop, walk right in when no one's there. I think he had a key. He could rebuild a pump for us when we needed it rebuilt, bring it back to the boat on a Sunday, and just get things done. Pat's a guy that it seems like he flew under the radar. I mean, I think he knew about everybody, and everybody knew about him, but it wasn't the shouted from the mountain. He just knew everybody and knew how to get things done. His frugalness with the boats. I remember on the Southern Wind, I held so much fuel that we would all be in shipyard. I would drive up to Dutch Harbor, top everybody off on fuel. We'd go out and fish. I did lots. We would go out and fish, come back. They'd all come to me. I'd fuel them up. They would tie up, and I would drive back to
Russ,
Seattle.
have a good trip.
I know, just to get another load of fuel.
Pizza too.
And it was
He was
cost
using
effective.
you as a fuel barge.
I was, yeah. I mean,
Because
there was
it was the right thing to do.
It was. It was cost effective.
Because
We did the same thing with Chickneck. We would fill up the Southern Wind and take it to Chickneck.
Well, it was the right
So
thing
part
to
of
do.
my relationship with Pat was on the political and on the fish buying side of the world, and so he was always keenly interested in what was going on in the markets. You could have endless conversations with him, and son of a gun if he just didn't know more than I did almost every time.
Oh yeah.
He really did his homework.
Yeah.
So you're talking about how did he change over time?
Yeah.
I mean, even up to I saw him shortly before he passed, when he couldn't hardly say anything anymore. Still, what's going on in the market, and what are the fishermen getting paid, and blah 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 blah.
Really?
It was always passionate for him to be involved in those kind of interactions with the processor, and he was a good guy for being a bellwether, right? What's the fleet thinking? Both on the crab side and on salmon, because of the tendering thing that he did.
Yeah.
He was sort of first line of defense for us, and he was definitely interested in the whole part of the business, not just did you catch a crab or did you fix your boat.
Well, we're gonna ask Jenny and Sean to come and talk to us here a little bit, but as they make their way up here, because they're probably figuring that out right now. How would you want to end it with your thoughts on ALS and what we can do?
Well, for me, it was living on the other side of the mountains. I was only over here, so often. So for me, seeing Pat, it was the drastic changes. First the hand that would atrophy and kind of fold up. Then it was the wheelchair. And so the changes were very drastic and heartbreaking.
And quick.
And quick. But John mentioned you can't talk about Pat without talking about Jenny. And when I met Pat, Jenny was going through cancer treatment and suffering cancer at the time. And the strength of their marriage and how he supported her and then her supporting him was the way it should be.
I know.
It was a good model.
What an inspiration.
Yeah.
Well, you hit on it very well, I think. To people that are listening to this, there's no one out there that doesn't have a friend or a family member that's affected by this disease. No one. Everybody has someone who they care for who's suffering from this disease. And Pat was determined to find a cure. That was his focus, and it wasn't necessarily a cure for him, but he was determined to find a cure. And that determination, I think, still lives on with Jenny and with Sean. And,
They are passionate about
they are,
it.
and we all need to help. We all need to help.
We were talking yesterday about a way that we could support this cause other than being here and remembering Pat and the way he affected our lives. But we had discussed making a pledge. And do you think it's appropriate to talk about that?
If you guys want to, I mean,
Just to get the ball rolling?
Oh, okay.
What's best from your perspective, Mark, in terms of...
for me, it's all about the money for this disease, and it's all about doing that today in Pat's name. So I'll leave that to you guys if you care to share what you're planning to do. That's up to you. Do not feel obligated at all, because we are gonna. What's happening, guys, is this is a fundraiser all evening tonight. You can log on to the Pat Dwyer ALS page, donate. Even after, if you're watching this video or listening to this podcast 6 months from now, that website is still active right now. You can go there right now, click on it, donate, spend the money. But Ian, if you want to share, if any of you guys want to share,
I think.
if you feel that you need to, please.
I think we discussed this a little bit, but I'd like to make a pledge of $1,000 to just kind of get the ball rolling.
Okay.
And I know that's not a lot, but something to help.
I think that's 1,000 more than we had a minute ago.
Anything for Pat, you know what I mean?
Yeah, we appreciate it.
I think we all quietly wrote down on a piece of paper, and I think we ended up writing down the same amount. But I've got...
You forget one thing, Russ.
What's that?
The processors have all the money.
That's right.
The crab fishermen don't get the money. The processors have all the money.
Yeah, and I'm just a lonely salmon
So,
fisherman now.
so one of those numbers was different.
I'll bet you.
Well, we didn't get to see the numbers. I was 1,000.
Yeah,
I'm going to match you, Ian.
So I don't
Thanks,
know.
Charlie.
Yeah. Anyway, it's a bigger number. Okay.
We'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And we'll see what happens out there. I'm hoping that somebody beats my number.
I challenge anyone to come forward and beat any of these gentlemen's numbers, because even if it was $1,000, we're $4,000 ahead right now than where we were 10 minutes ago.
Yeah.
And you guys, again, I encourage you, share this video, log on, donate. They're tracking those numbers live for us today. We're going to know what was made. I know some people don't have the attention span to tune in to a 40-minute broadcast, especially on live. We've all got lives to live, and the kids are coming home soon, or dinner's going to be ready. But remember, there's families out there with this disease finding out today that their family member is going to be gone in 2 to 7 years.
Could you do 15 seconds on TDI, just so that people understand why we're doing that?
Yeah, actually, I was going to ask Jenny to explain it a little bit. But, but you're right. From what my understanding is, Pat chose it because of searching for the cure.
Yeah.
And not so much the treatment, but we'll ask Jenny to explain it, because who's more involved? I mean, she's super.
Let's get her in here.
Involved. Let's get her in here.
All right.
Thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
Oh, just step around the table so you can watch her. Make her nervous.
Are you going to sit with my boyfriend? Oh.
Guys,
we have to share you?
guys, joining us
guess.
now is going to be Jenny and Sean. Hi, guys.
Hey.
Hello.
So you've been watching.
We've been watching, yes.
What are your thoughts?
I am overwhelmed hearing these guys talk about Pat. I mean, I don't remember who said it, but Pat really was kind of an under-the-radar kind of guy. At the same time, being involved in this industry, you have to have a little bit of a ego, I'll call it confidence. So I think he was just like this great mixture of being able to work with people, get things done, but being confident enough to know that what he was doing was going to be right in the end. And to hear that validated, and we're coming up on the 5-year anniversary of his death, it's just, I'm overwhelmed.
Sean, your thoughts after hearing
Ditto.
this today?
Yeah. No. I mean, it's amazing to hear the stories that we didn't know, or we didn't know the whole deal, and to hear you guys go back, 30 years. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool to hear the stories that we just didn't know. Like, I didn't know that there was a tire rolling down your street you grew up on that was on fire, and it may or may not have come from one of my dad's cars.
Well, yeah, he was a prankster, that's for sure.
So it's fun, and I guess at the end of the day, it's all about, especially with your podcast, taking the stories that are undercover and kind of bringing them forward and doing something more with them. And for us, and for my dad's story, and today, we're able to do a lot. We're raising money. We're having, beer in the sunshine. But it's more than that. It's every 90 minutes, like you said, somebody's going to find out today that they have ALS. And if we can raise $10, $1,000, or $1, that's one more dollar that goes towards finding the cure.
Well, these four gentlemen have put us at least at a minimum of $4,000 today.
Perfect.
So if nothing else goes our way,
That's incredible.
we're at $4,000.
That's great. Thank you, guys.
Yes, thank you. And I want to say that the reason Pat supported ALS TDI was because they're small enough and they're nimble enough that they can think outside the box, number one, which is what he did all the time. He was so creative on trying to figure out, I know, how to fix things or set people up.
Right.
I know. But ALS TDI just, they're very creative in how they're approaching research. He truly felt that TDI would be the place where a treatment is gonna come about. And the crazy thing is that we have this drug that we're going to start putting into clinical trial. I don't know the time frame, but definitely by the end of 2018. I know it's going to.
Is this the new one?
Mm-hmm, the AT-1501. We just need money to get that drug to a clinical trial
get some
and
money.
Get it into people.
How long has it been since a trial came out last for ALS treatment?
Well, there's a couple successful. Well, there's a couple trials going on right now. One involves stem cells that's really promising, and then there was also a new drug that was released, but the jury's still out a little bit on that. Endeavoron.
Neuraltis.
Is that the one that had been 22 years before a new treatment came out?
Yeah.
So that's the
So we're
time
just
frame.
now starting to put
22 years.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
So we need to get on board
That's
here.
not acceptable.
We need to get a horse in the race. We need to get
need-
this drug into trial.
We need to get this drug into trial, and the only thing that we're lacking is money for that. And by you guys making these first donations, it's, I hope, going to start a snowball effect, and we'll get that drug to families. It's, of course, clinical trials always take much longer than people who are living with the disease want them to take, but if we can get it going, it's going to move forward quickly. I always tell people, because people always say, I've only got $5. I'm like, $5 is a huge amount. It's $5 more than we had yesterday.
Right.
And it doesn't have to be $1,000. It can be whatever you can make it to be.
Yeah.
We'll take the $1,000.
It's not uncurable. It's just underfunded. That's the saying in the ALS community, is that it just needs attention. It kind of has been under the radar for too long, and we want to bring it forward and raise awareness.
You two have the passion for that, though. You have the drive for that. When I recorded Sean's podcast, we sat for 42 minutes. We had a couple beers, as is given when we do a podcast.
Yeah.
But after that, he stayed an hour and a half.
Oh, really?
And that hour and a half was talking about his dad.
Oh. He's a good boy.
reiterating stories about Pat, and learned this from my dad. And I was driving forklifts down there and picking up welding wire, and just
At 10 years old.
it was on and on.
You know that, John?
So
I think Pat double billed us on some hours.
Yeah, right.
Well, I didn't get the money.
You got dinner that night.
That's right. Yeah.
So in closing, Sean and Jenny, do you have anything that you'd like to really get to punch in there? We're asking for money, obviously, but
We're asking for money. I want to just send a hello out to our daughter Brenna, who's in Montana. You know, she lived with this disease as well, and
she's here.
oh yay! Hi, Bren. And she loved her dad. Her dad loved her, and you know, we all took care of Pat. You know, you can't do ALS by yourself.
Right.
You can't do it. And you know, the three of us were his main caregivers, and you know, I just want to say, Brenna, we miss you, and thanks.
Hi, Mom.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm crying.
Well, yeah. I mean, that. Just to reiterate, it takes a village. You know, when someone is diagnosed with ALS, it's not just something you can keep in the family. The more you start talking to people, and the more you bring it forward, the more you learn about the disease, and you learn, I guess I had like an uncle or a distant cousin or maybe a friend of a friend that you just didn't know why they were sick, and now maybe we can kind of put a label on that and figure out that there's more ALS around us than we think, and do something about it. And so I guess that's what we'd like to get out, or I would. It's just just talk about it. It's not just Lou Gehrig's disease. It's Pat Dwyer's disease.
It is. And someone else's every 90 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know.
every 90 minutes.
So we'll, in my closing, I'd like to say that for those of you watching it live now, you've got a lot of patience with me. But it also says something about you. If you've watched this video this long, even in a replay, it means that you're supportive and passionate about this. So I challenge you to share this video. Get it out there. This ALS Pat Dwyer page is not coming down. It will be up. I mentioned it earlier. If you click on this link in a month, 2 months, 5 months, a year, it's going to be there. You can still donate. Please do today if you can, but at any time that you're hearing this. I can't thank everybody enough for coming and making this happen.
Thank you, Mark.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's
for bringing everybody together.
The whole deal of Galley Stories is capturing stories before they're gone. Unfortunately, your dad's story is gone, but you guys are here to tell it. So that's what we've done today, and we're going to raise some money for him.
Perfect.
Can I say one more thing?
Absolutely. You can have the last word.
So ALS TDI was started when one brother was diagnosed with ALS, and the other brother looked around at the landscape and said, there is not an organization that's going to move quick enough to help me find a treatment for my brother. And that was something that resonated with me when we started looking around at who we wanted to raise funds for. And ALS TDI is a family. There's 30 scientists on staff. There's 54 people on staff, 30 scientists. That's all they do. They research ALS 24/7. It kind of reminds me of the whole fishing community as well. You heard the great stories about Pat when he was healthy and working within the industry. When Pat got sick, the fishing industry, our friends, Pat loved talking with John about the price of fish in Japan, and it was this connection that you guys had with him within the community, the fishing community, the whole fishing community, and they have been some of our biggest supporters and most passionate friends. So I just want to say thank you to you guys for being here. Thank you to the fishing community, and thank you to ALS TDI for working on this problem, and they're going to solve it. Thank you.
All right, guys, that's going to be it. We appreciate you tuning in, and Look forward to uploading this tonight. It will be our Monday upload because we didn't do one yesterday and saving for this event. It's been Galley Stories, and we'll see you next time.
All right, thanks.
All right, well
Click,
said.
click.
Well said, gang.
What'd you guys think?
That was good. That was hot up here.
It's hot up here.
It's all about,
Good
all
job.
about raising that money.
Man.
Jen, are we off the line? We're off.
Hey,
I brought this for you. I wrote this on yellow legal pad. On yellow.
Of course.
We should have gave you this when we were still rolling.
Oh my God.
This
no.
was you asked me to say a few words
Right.
for Pat at the Wake, and that's what this
That's
is.
what
And,
that
and,
is.
and so I thought you might like to have it. I wrote
Thank
it
you.
6 years ago or 5 years ago, I guess.
5 years.
Good job, everybody.
telling-
Thanks a lot.
I was telling Mark about that I had brought this for you, and he asked me if I would read it, and I don't really want to read it if that's okay,
Oh.
but I don't know that I can.
Yeah.
But I wanted to read the last paragraph
Okay.
to you.
Sure.
You probably may remember, maybe
I
not.
have no memory of like
I
that
don't
day
either.
at all.
I kept saying,
This is very much how I still feel about Pat. So the Bering Sea can be a lonely place. Sometimes there are no other boats visible as far as the eye can see, but you know that they are there because at night you can see the reflection of their lights against the winter night sky. I like to think about Pat that way. I can't see him anymore, but I know he's there. Crab lights aglow just over the horizon.
Yeah.
all right.
And I wanted to give it to you,
Thank you.
if you want it.
Of course.
Wow, guys, they
course.
thought we were done. So that's going to conclude the online version of our podcast today. Again, thanks a lot for tuning in to Galley Stories, and we'll see you next time.